Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Scary Stories video, and today we're going to be getting into some more subscribers of his constant police evasion. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Scary Stories video, and today we're going to be getting into some more subscriber submitted stories. I've been loving your guys' stories. You guys are great writers, have some scary ass stories, and just stay safe out there because you guys seem to be getting in some dangerous situations. But I appreciate you guys sending in your stories, and if you want to send in your story for a future video, please submit to this email here on screen. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into some terrifying, true, scary stories. Please like and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 500,000 subscribers, so please subscribe. And all right, without further ado, let's get into some terrifying, true, scary stories. Longtime viewer of the channel, hello Snook. I have a bunch of wild stories from my life, but I'll go with my stalker story for just now. My name is Zombie Saza, if that's important. Thank you for your story, Zombie, and let's get into your story. My stalking story, 2008. At 17, I dated a 29-year-old man. I'm a child abuse survivor and didn't have a great understanding of what a healthy relationship or love was, just for context. For a short period of time, but he tried being violent towards me. I refused to accept the behavior and fought back hard. Told him it was over and to never contact me again. Well, he stalked me for a period of time. Caught on my work CCTV, my work, the only adults in my life who truly cared for me, made sure someone drove me home every late evening, Burger King late shifts, and the male staff would escort me, leaving the building because my ex was terrifying. He kept getting my new mobile number despite having changed several times, only to find a friend felt he deserved my new numbers. So I changed my number again and didn't give it to anyone else unless necessary. He'd stalk me online, outside my work, outside my home. The police knew of the situation, but he hadn't physically done anything to me at the point, but was clearly gearing up to do something, and I was on edge. The cops had me give regular updates as they'd known my biological family a long time. A couple of them are father figures to this day, actually. They wanted to act, but had to stay within the law, which sadly made it clear my ex hadn't yet physically done anything other than stalk me. And because he had warrants out for his arrest, they had been unable to find him at this time to tell him in person to leave me alone. The whole situation made rather difficult because of his constant police evasion. The police wanted desperately to arrest this guy for his warrant charges and wanted to add stalking to that list, but nobody would tell them where he was. Folk were intentionally hiding the guy's address, knowing he was extremely violent and stalking a 17-year-old. He got my new number somehow, and I agreed to meet him in the town center, in broad daylight, at a certain location. I contacted the police so they knew where this meet was, because they could finally get him for those warrants and arrest him, so they'd have some officers waiting nearby. The whole time, my body is screaming, "Leave now." And I'd listen any other time, but I was determined to be free of this utter psycho ruining my life. I met him, and he was off, and it frightened me, but I had to suppress every visible emotion and get ready to defend myself in case he kicked off, which was incredibly likely. He kept demanding we go to my house to talk, that we would watch a movie, as he puts me in my place, that I had to listen to him because I belonged to him, that I was his woman, and if I didn't stop listening and go with him, he'd take you with me and teach you how to listen. I started walking in the town center with him by my side because I couldn't sit still during this meet. I couldn't trust him and needed witnesses in case something happened. To an area with CCTV. I spotted one of the guys who was plain clothed undercover and walked in his general direction and just made eye contact, trying not to make his presence known or what I was doing, and the cops thankfully grabbed him. He went into a rage, screaming how he'd end me, how I didn't deserve to live, that he'd ruined my life, and that I was lucky. It was a lot of verbal threats as he was held down onto the ground by 4 cops. Like 4 guys had to wrestle him down because he was not complying. The cops went through his belongings and found condoms, rope, knives, and a firearm. I'm from Scotland. We have very strict firearm laws. Legally speaking, he never had good cause to have a firearm, such as being a farmer, veterinarian, military/police, etc. And as a long-term felon was excluded from legal ownership. And I later found out his arrest warrant was for having illegal firearms. Attacking a man with a knife, cutting up his face, and creating IEDs. So when he screamed I was lucky, he wasn't kidding. The cops and myself were very silent seeing this firearm, blood running cold. I wanted to run the very moment I got to the town center, but the only way I'd be free was to stay there despite my lizard brain screaming run. He's still in prison. There were a bunch of other charges relating to indecent exposure towards minors, using the firearms, making IEDs, and narcotic offenses. This was the only time I've ignored that you need to leave feeling in my life because he desperately needed to be imprisoned. The cops were glad to finally have him arrested and subsequently jailed. Him stalking was just adding more charges to his rap sheet, but the issue was his evasion. The cops were pretty good at dealing with stalking cases, and I've seen quite a few go to court. But if the dude stalking can't be found, then that makes it almost feel impossible. In Scotland, they'll happily contact your stalker on your behalf to tell them to leave you alone, or there will be police action, along with keeping reports and records so you have a constant paper trail. They're pretty decent compared to other countries, basically. Anyways, that's my story. It was a half a lifetime ago, as I'm 34 now, but it stayed with me. And regarding the context of being a child abuse survivor, I've long cut all contact with my biological mother and brother. Gotten diagnosed with PTSD, led a very quiet life, have solid home security that to most people seems over the top, love your channel, and never really had somewhere to share my story, so much love from Scotland. I don't believe in skinwalkers, but what happened in this building changed everything. Hey Snook, my name is Viraj, and this happened to me around a year ago. I love to listen to your videos when I am studying. Please try upload daily. I'll try my best. That's a lot of uploads, but maybe 4 uploads a week soon. Don't quote me on that, but maybe sometime in the near future. Anyways, into your story. I never really talked about it publicly, but I feel like it's now the right time. So look, I don't go out looking for hard things just for content. That's not what I'm about. I'm just chasing a dream. I make YouTube videos where I go to abandoned places, sit down and talk about life. I talk about the things on my mind, my goals, next steps, the journey, all of that. There was one video where I just sat on a bridge. The vibe was unreal, calm, peaceful, reflective. That's the kind of content I love, real, raw, no distractions. And recently, I've been into abandoned buildings. Why? Simple. Nobody's there. There's no pressure, no awkwardness. I don't have to feel weird if someone walks by while I'm recording. I can talk to the camera like I'm talking to you without holding anything back. Also, let's be real. I don't believe in ghosts or skinwalkers or whatever. What's a skinwalker gonna do? Kill me? Fine. But humans? Humans are way scarier. They'll betray you, ruin your mental health, play with your emotions. They'll act like they love you and still leave you broken. So yeah, I'll take a haunted building over fake people any day. Anyway, this was one day. I found this 5-story building, all abandoned and crumbling. And I was like, yeah, perfect spot. I started taking photos, just feeling the vibe. I got some really cool shots. Eventually, I made my way up to the 5th floor, and I found this one room, no one in sight. I sat down and started scrolling through my photos before recording my video, just chilling. And then I noticed something. In one of the pictures, just behind me, above my head, there was a head poking out of the corner. Not blurred, not hidden, just looking straight into the camera. Dead center, right into my soul. I didn't notice it when I took the photo, but when I saw it, something in me froze. Now look, I'm a strong guy. I don't say that with ego. I train, I'm fast, and if anything were to go down, I can defend myself. And that's part of the reason I feel comfortable in these places. If a cracked out squatter or something pops out, I can handle myself. But this wasn't human. I looked up. and in the exact same corner, I saw it. The head. Still there. But now it was smiling. And not like a normal smile. This smile was wide, unnatural, way too big for a human face. I was on the 5th floor. No stairs behind me. The window was broken, but if I jumped out, I'd die instantly. I had nowhere to go, so I reached for my knife. Not because I thought it would help, but because I needed something to hold. Something to ground me. I stared at that thing. And then, it did something that still haunts me. It started to pull its head back. Slowly. Almost like it was playing with me. And then it disappeared. I kept my eyes on that corner, refusing to blink. I didn't move, but then I heard something. Behind me, from the window. And I thought, no way. I turned, just a little, and there it was. Hanging from the window. Like a person mid-jump, just suspended there. It was trying to attack me from both sides. That's when my body said run. And I listened. I ran as fast as I could. Bro, I'm not kidding. I'm fast. Not being cocky. I'm just trained, quick, explosive. And I ran, knife in one hand, camera in the other. But the creepy part, that thing wasn't crawling, wasn't running. It was walking, calm, controlled. But somehow, every floor I went down, it got closer. When I finally reached the exit, I jumped on my bike, trying to start it. It wouldn't turn on. Of course, horror movie vibes, right? 5 kicks, nothing. I'm sweating, heart racing, and boom, it starts. I take off, dirt flying down the broken road. Then I look into my rear view mirror, and I swear to you, there was a whole family of them. Some tall, some small, all of them smiling. That same stretched, unnatural smile. As I sped away, thoughts started racing. Are they going to follow me? Are they in my head now? Are they real, or am I going crazy? I know trauma doesn't just vanish. Stuff like that, it stays. It changes you. When I got home, I searched up the place, and this time, I actually found something. Apparently, years ago, there was a facility there. Some say it was a hospital. Others say it was a lab, but one thing's agreed on. People went missing. Locals stopped going anywhere near that building. They say if you see one of them, it means they've already seen you. And once they do, they don't forget. So yeah, that's my story. And honestly, I don't even know what's real anymore, but I know what I felt, and I know what I saw. I might share more of these stories from me or even from my friends. One of them had a crazy experience on a mountain, but I'll save that for next time. Reply if you'd like to hear. Thanks for listening. And maybe don't go exploring alone. Hey Snook, I love your videos so much. It's hard to find a good channel that isn't AI or has an annoying voice, so thank you for making good videos. And I apologize if it's not that scary. I'm also a better listener than I am a writer, so sorry if I missed some details or said too many. So, for some context, I live in the southern suburbs of Chicago, in kind of a lower middle class area. I like the woods, though I don't get to go as often as I like. When I was about 13 or 14, me and my cousin Dom, he was around 12 at the time, decided to go into the nearby woods about half a mile away from my house. We didn't want to walk the trail, so we decided to go across the train tracks straight into the woods. We sat down just on the edge of the woods and watched a train go by. Then we started making our way a little further into the woods. While we were walking, I noticed something a little farther away from us, maybe 100 feet away. We walked towards it, and I was able to get a good look. It was a chair, a blue folding chair with rust all up and down the legs. After looking around a little closer, I realized there was more than just the chair. There was a dirty sleeping bag, an empty cooler, and some crushed beer cans around the makeshift campsite. I told my cousin it was probably just some homeless guy's camp and that we should leave. After walking for a few more minutes, we found a couple logs and decided we should build a fort. We started collecting logs and big sticks, stacking them between 2 trees. About an hour and a half later, we both heard a loud snap, like someone stepping on a stick. I froze, scanning the forest around us. After not seeing anything, I started stacking, while trying to stay aware of my surroundings. About a minute later, we heard it again, this time closer. Dom dropped his sticks and ran over to me. He told me he saw someone stop behind a tree right after the noise. I asked him which tree it was, but before he could say anything, we heard a loud laugh. It was like a wheezing laugh a smoker would make, but it only lasted a second. We froze, staring at the tree, when finally a man stepped out. He was dirty. He was almost bald, with some hair on the sides and back of his head, with a dirty beard that had yellow stains around his mouth. He was smiling, showing his teeth, at least what was left of them. They were all black and he was missing a lot. He was wearing a ragged jacket despite it being the middle of June, and dirty jeans with weird colored stains. He took a long step forward, like a cartoonishly long step. He lifted his knee as high as he could, kicked it out, and planted it on the ground. Then he dragged his back foot to be right next to the other. We ran as fast as we could, jumping over fallen trees and trying to avoid thorn bushes as we sprinted full speed. Dom was falling behind, so I had to slow down and grab his arm. I pulled him along until we got to the train tracks. I let go and started climbing up the tracks. Dom did the same. Before I could get to the top, I looked down the track and saw the train coming. Fast. It was too close for either of us to cross, so I ran over to Dom and told him to stop. We waited for the train to pass, looking back constantly, making sure he wasn't following us. After the train passed, we ran up and over the tracks. We made it to the street and we were finally far away enough to catch our breath. We walked back to my house, and on the way, I realized I dropped my keys at some point while we were running. I didn't care too much though. Just happy we weren't dead in the middle of the woods. We got back and played some video games, trying to forget what happened. I thought that was the end of it. Dom went home, and I went to sleep. The next morning, I got up and went downstairs. I looked out my back sliding door and froze. I choked back a scream and nearly lost my shit. On the patio, in the very center, was a key. My key. To this day, I still haven't told my parents, and I still have no idea how they ended up there. There was no way to find my house with the keys. It's been about 6 years since this happened, and thankfully, nothing else came of it. Me and Dom talk about it every once in a while. Safe to say, I will never, ever go back to those woods again. Hey Snook, I just wanted to start by saying I love your videos and I hope your channel reaches its sub goal of 500k. This story I already submitted to your email, but I edited it so it makes more sense grammatically. Have you ever remembered something so vividly that you would combat anyone who challenges the way you remember it? You know for certain something is in fact one way, solely because it's so clear to you when your mind returns to that memory. Have you ever been confronted with the fact that what you remember may not be reality? What do we know when the truth combats logical explanation? Have you ever experienced the Mandela effect? For example, there's a children's book series based on the family of bears. It is called the Bernstein Bears or the Bernstein Bears. Answers may split, but it's the Bernstein Bears. What about the statue, the thinker? Is his hand in a closed fist on his temple, or is it a downward-facing open palm placed under the chin? Again, the truth may be the open palm, but you may be someone who swears that it was a closed fist. Our minds, for some reason, have a way of remembering something so vividly, even if it is wrong. There are dozens of examples throughout history. I encourage you to see what you remember and challenge it with what is in fact the truth. I was faced with the same phenomenon when I was an early teen, and it hasn't left me since. When I was about 7 years old, my mother had moved my brother and I into a new town. Due to the 2008 crash and my mother divorcing her stepfather at the time, we moved in with my grandmother after losing our home. We all lived in the more wooded and mountain area of New Jersey. Being new to the area and it being summer, my younger brother Michael and I would ride bikes to explore the neighborhood. Shortly after moving in, we befriended a brother and sister who lived right next door. Julia and I were the same age and both in first grade, while Michael and Victor were a year younger. When September came along, we all took the same bus that stopped at the end of our street and delivered us to the same elementary school. On my first day of school, I was sat next to a boy in my class who was all by himself. I assumed he was just shy and maybe new like I was. I remember he was pale. He had blue eyes, longer blonde hair that went past his ears and almost touched his shoulders. His name was Will, and after I introduced myself, we became friends very quickly. I learned that day that he even took the same bus as me. We'd sit with each other in the back while my brother would sit with the new friends he made while in his own class. Will's bus stop would always be the one before mine, although that doesn't seem far now. It seemed far from my house. In my head, it justified us not hanging outside of school, mostly because I didn't want to bike that far, and I knew I would see him every day at school. Like normal kids our age, we had our good days and bad days. We would argue, fight over toys, or call each other names. I remember us playing too rough on the bus one time on our way to school. He shoved me. I shoved him back. Then faster than I could register, he grabbed me by my hair, whipped me forward, and slammed my head into the window of the bus. I was too dazed to say anything or let alone scream. He laughed, and I assumed it's because he may have thought we were still playing. But I was hurt and did not want to play anymore, especially if he was going to play like that. I told him that what he did was mean and that I didn't want to be friends anymore. He frowned at me. Without saying a word, he got off at his bus stop, and just like that, we weren't friends. Later, when I came home, my mom asked what happened to my head. I wanted to tell her the truth, that a boy I had been friends with played a little too rough. For some reason, I lied. I said that Julia did it, and that it was an accident. In my head, it saved me the trouble of having to explain something that I didn't want to talk about. I don't know why, but I just felt like I shouldn't tell her about Will. I don't remember seeing him at school or on the bus the next few days, and I started to miss him. I knew it was an accident, and I had regretted it, telling him I didn't want to be friends. Coincidentally, as soon as I started to miss him, he showed up at school again. He apologized to me, and I apologized to him. We became friends again, and we finished one school year and then another, remaining friends, but never hanging out outside of school. It's just something we never thought of. It didn't affect our relationship, and all the stupid fights and name-calling would just dissolve. The summer came around. My family and I moved to a new town before I entered 3rd grade. We said goodbye to Julia and Victor and left. I remember being sad I couldn't say bye to Will, but my mom said that we can always come visit. I quickly moved on, though, and hadn't visited any of my friends since the move. Flash forward. I'm 14 in the summer before starting my freshman year of high school. I'd gotten Instagram the year before and reconnected with Julia. We caught up and soon made plans to hang out. My mother drove my brother and I to their house, and we couldn't be more excited to reconnect. Michael and Victor stayed at the house to play video games, and Julia and I went outside so I could soak it all in, the changes of my old neighborhood. While on our stroll, I was rushed with the memories of school, catching the bus, classes, recess, and then Will. Does Will still live here? Will, who? Julia replied. I forgot his name. I think it started with a Z. Him and I used to be best friends. He was a white kid with dirty blonde hair and blue eyes. Julie was still puzzled. I assumed she just didn't know off the top of her head, but they would still be in the same school as of now. He sat next to me in 1st grade while you were in the front. He also sat next to me in 2nd grade. Him and I always played tag with all the other kids at recess. We had 13 other kids in our class, she said. I don't remember anyone named Will. She was wrong, though. There were 16 of us. 13 other students. Julia, me, and Will. No, there were 16. I know that because Mrs. Adams broke us all into 4 groups. It was for that multicultural project. There were 4 students in each. She stopped and looked at me with concern. No, there were 4 groups, but one had 3 students. You were in that group. This is strange. Someone was misremembering. I was so certain that it was me, but it couldn't be. I spent 2 years as this kid's friend. No way I was wrong. She had to have forgotten. Needless to say, it was going nowhere. She had no idea who I was talking about, but she said we could browse through her copy of the school yearbook from that year. We went back to her house and ordered pizza with her family. Julie went downstairs to get her yearbook, while Victor, Michael, and I were on the couch watching TV. When she came back downstairs, she had also brought her other yearbooks from her other grades. Browsing through the pages, she flipped to our class. Yep, here, all 15 of us. She handed me the book, and I counted all the faces. 15 faces. I counted again. 15 faces. My mind is being thrown in a loop. I know I was young and I hadn't seen him in a long time, but I know Will was real. This had to be a mistake. Maybe he missed picture day and he was just never in the photos? What about the yearbook from second grade, I asked. Maybe it was only second grade when him and I met. Julia pulled out the other yearbook while I stared blankly at the one in front of me. I couldn't understand what I was experiencing. I started to feel cold. No, she said, he's not in here either. I grabbed the yearbook out of her hands and looked through my second grade class. There was no one named Will. There wasn't even a single kid who fit the description. I didn't want to panic, but I couldn't sit still at this point. Who are you talking about? Michael chimed in. Victor also gave a look of curiosity. They weren't with us when we first discussed Will. Maybe they could shed light on it. We were all on the same bus there and back. It's possible that maybe one of them will know who I'm talking about. Wait, everyone had their eyes on Michael. I think I remember someone that you're talking about. Blonde hair, blue eyes. He was kind of pale, wasn't he? Finally, someone else who can remember him. Do you have a picture of him? Shit. No, he's not in any of the yearbooks either. I kept my eyes fixed on the class photo, scanning the rows of faces, all of them in their right place except for one. Hey, look at this. I draw everyone's attention to the class photo. It shows all the students and the two teachers standing in 3 rows of 5. The second row and the third row were aligned perfectly, but the first row was shifted to the left, like the spot on the end was open. But whoever was supposed to fill it just walked off. That's weird. Julia looked closer at the photo. Why would they not align the first row with the rest? Unless it is aligned, Michael added. The way they're positioned, it's like there's supposed to be someone else on the end. He put his hand on the table in front of us with a book laid, signaling to us he had an idea. Find another class of 16, they'd probably just be aligned that way too, right? Then we would know for sure. Julia slowly turned the page to look at a photo of one of the other classes. My stomach sank when we saw the first row of 6, then the following rows of 5, centered to the first row, all accounted for. In comparison, my class of 15 seemed to have been missing one student. Julia had another idea. Her mother once volunteered as a chaperone for a school field day event. While there, she took pictures of most of the day's activities. Maybe we can spot him in a photo? It was worth a shot. She grabbed the yearbook and flipped to the back pages that showed the school events. We held on with bated breath, waiting to turn the page and spot the face of a boy no one could remember. When the page turned, we leaned in to scan the entire book, browsing through laughing faces and moments frozen in time, the memories coming back clearer than before. Even more so when we all laid eyes on the group photo, one that showed all of us, bunched together in an embrace. Though the group seemed full, it was plagued by the painfully obvious gap in between me and Michael. In that empty space was my arm, positioned like it was meant to be thrown around someone's shoulder, to pull them in for the group photo being taken, but no one was there. I thought the worst thing I had to fear was that maybe this boy was an imaginary friend. Someone made up by my very active adolescent mind, but I could never begin to explain this. There's nothing to document the existence of a boy named Will in any of these photos, but then why are there empty spaces where a person should be present? Why does my mind fill in these spots with the image of a blonde-haired boy with blue eyes and pale skin? Why am I the only one who can remember him? The day turned to night. Our time together ran out, and it was time for my brother and I to leave. We carried the uneasy feeling with us and into the car as we drove back home. Out of curiosity, I asked my mother if she remembers a boy named Will that I used to go to school with. I'm sorry, sweetie, I don't. You had lots of friends. I turned to face out the window, still unsatisfied with how everything appears to be unfolding. But, she continued, I have a box full of memorabilia from your younger years in the attic. Lots of drawings and stuff. I just couldn't throw those away, you know? Maybe what I was looking for was in there. I love to draw, and not only that, it's what Will and I would do during free time in our classes. If there was a chance to prove I wasn't just imagining him, then it was in the box. This also means that, if I wasn't imagining him, something else is going on. Something more terrifying and unexplainable. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, the box placed in front of me. A red flip-to-open Nike shoebox, now housing possibly the darkest truth that will be revealed to me. I opened the lid and began to sort through the old, crumpled, and wrinkled papers. The difference in skills, though very slim, helped me sort through what belonged to Michael and what belonged to me. Halfway through the stack, I held the pages in my hand that confirmed my worst fear. In a green grass field, with a bright yellow sun and two big trees, stood two boys side by side. The boy on the left matching the appearance of my hazel eyes and brown hair. On the right, a boy with yellow hair on his head, the two blue circles in his head for eyes, and a black outline of a shirt, the white of the page being used to fill it in. Lingering above the heads of both figures read, "Best friends," in red crayon. Hello Snook, my name is Alex. I've been watching every single video since your iceberg days, so when I heard you wanted subscribers to submit these stories, I was stoked. I hope you get to read my story in one of your videos, and I hope you're doing great in life and pushing forward through any struggles. Feel free to make any grammatical corrections to my spelling, by the way. And thank you so much for those kind words. That really means a lot. And yeah, I'm doing great. And you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching all these videos. And let's get into your story. I'm an auto body man / mechanic here in the forgotten state of New Mexico. Cars have been my family's life for generations, so I love driving, especially long distances. My girlfriend of 2 years now, being native, lives basically an hour away from nowhere, deep in the Pueblo, so I don't mind driving up there, although gas gets expensive sometimes. It was a colder night around September / October, and my Audi was down at the time since I was changing the radiator fan, so I took my dad's big 2016 Ford Expedition to her place since she had spent the whole weekend at my house, and it was normal to drop her off Sunday night so I can get to work on time the following day. The streets were empty. We saw maybe 1 or 2 cars along the long stretch of road, which is weird but not unusual. We were blasting music, taking the long drive, having fun, and laughing our asses off. But then, out of the corner of my eye, passing the bridge to Bernalino, traveling north, I see a figure, a tall white figure. I turn my head and fading away into the darkness as my headlights passed it on. I saw it. Crouched down like an infant inspecting a penny on the floor was a very skinny, extremely lanky, completely white, naked humanoid creature, about 8 to 10 feet in height. Its arms and legs seemed to have a wingspan bigger than itself, and its eyes, wild black, could tell, was meeting my gaze, even traveling at around 90 miles an hour. I'd be lying if I said I didn't almost crap my pants right then and there, but I kept my composure. Then I looked at my girlfriend, still singing, yelling at the top of her lungs, and completely unaware of anything that just happened. So I ignored it. I told myself there were many tall and short street signs there, and my eyes must have been playing games with me. I knew what I saw, but had to lie to myself to make it to my destination. There was this feeling, a certain feeling I hadn't ever experienced to such an intensity, the feeling of being watched. I felt like I wasn't in control anymore. Something was following us and stalking.
Ce soir, nous sommes près de 1500 à être réunis autour des flammes. C'est un honneur et un privilège de lire ces histoires pour vous. Celle qui suit est librement inspirée du vrai témoignage d'un chasseur dans la région du Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. Installez-vous confortablement et laissez-moi vous raconter. Des Sasquatch au Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. Tout d'abord, je préfère conserver l'anonymat pour protéger ma famille et moi-même. De plus, je souhaite que l'endroit précis où se sont déroulés les événements que je vais vous décrire ne soit pas divulgué. C'est à la fois mon territoire de chasse et l'emplacement du chalet de ma famille. Depuis ma naissance, j'ai passé plus de temps en forêt qu'au milieu des hommes. Le chalet de mon père est situé dans le nord de la ville de Saguenay, près d'un petit lac niché au fond d'une vallée. Cet endroit est particulièrement difficile d'accès et reste extrêmement sauvage. On y chasse notamment l'ours, l'orignal, le cerf, le coyote et le loup. Je suis familier avec tous les chants d'oiseaux et les cris des mammifères qui peuplent cette région. Par exemple, je reconnais aisément le rugissement distinctif du lynx, ainsi que les cris de certains oiseaux qui pourraient facilement être confondus avec ceux d'une femme en détresse. Une fois, j'ai été traqué par une meute de loups. De les voir se coordonner pour resserrer le cercle autour de moi était une expérience extrêmement intimidante et impressionnante. Cela dit, jusqu'ici, jamais je n'avais vécu telle histoire et telle frayeur. Juin 2004. Ce printemps-là, j'avais 30 ans. 3 ans plus tôt, en 2001, un type qui s'appelle Yvon Leclerc avait trouvé des traces de pieds immenses dans le secteur des Monts-Valin. Les journalistes, surgissant en meute dans notre petit coin de pays, en avaient fait leur chou gras. Une histoire comme celle-là, ça se retrouve vite sur toutes les lèvres, particulièrement en ville où tout le monde y allait de ses propres théories farfelues. Je vous l'ai dit, ces bois, je les connais par cœur. J'étais donc sceptique, sans toutefois rejeter d'emblée l'idée que de telles créatures puissent exister. Ne tournons pas autour du pot, voulez-vous. C'est bien de Sasquatch dont il est question. De Bigfoot, d'hommes des bois. Appelez-les comme vous voudrez. C'est un secteur où la faune est riche et il ne nous était jamais arrivé de revenir bredouille, sauf depuis 2001. Pendant 2 ans, nous ne trouvions aucune trace d'ours, aucun excrément, rien. Nous nous demandions si les populations avaient migré vers le nord ou ailleurs. Après tout, le territoire est vaste. Payer pour un permis de chasse, faire de longs trajets, passer des heures en forêt. Tout ça pour faire chou blanc. C'était de plus en plus frustrant. Donc, en juin 2004, on n'était pas certain de réussir à récolter ne serait-ce qu'un seul ours. Néanmoins, on est parti au chalet avec mon père, plein d'espoir. On y allait du vendredi au lundi matin, ce qui ne nous laissait que 2 jours entiers de chasse. Après les quelques heures de route sur des chemins forestiers sinueux, on a débarqué notre équipement du pick-up. Une fois à l'intérieur, il restait à démarrer le réfrigérateur au gaz propane, s'assurer que la pompe à eau fonctionnait bien, ce genre de choses. C'est un chalet modeste, mais on y est confortable. En été, toute la famille vient y faire son tour, mes oncles et mes cousins avec leurs enfants, ma sœur et ma mère. Il y a 4 chambres en tout, qui comprennent chacune 4 lits simples superposés. La cuisine est spacieuse et 2 grandes tables permettent de prendre place tous en même temps pour les repas, même quand le chalet est à pleine capacité. Quand tout fut installé, la nuit était déjà tombée. Il était donc hors de question de chasser ce soir-là. Pour passer le temps, on jouait aux cartes. On buvait de la bière assis dehors sur le balcon. Il ne l'aura jamais avoué, mais je sais que mon père adorait ces moments que l'on passait ensemble dans notre petit coin de paradis, assis à regarder le lac et les étoiles. On se coucha tôt pour être en forme le lendemain. À l'aube, fidèle à nos habitudes, on revêtit nos habits de camouflage. On était prêts à partir, avec en main nos fusils de gros calibre et nos immenses tasses isothermes remplies de café. Enfin, si on peut appeler ça du café. Mon père le faisait si fort qu'il goûtait la mélasse amère. Et comble du malheur, c'était toujours le premier lever spécialement pour préparer le café. Il me tendit la tasse pleine de son infecte infusion, tout sourire. Certains y ajoutent un nuage de lait. Moi, c'était tout un ciel que je versais dans la tasse, en plus d'une montagne de sucre. Ah, voilà qui rendait les gorgées tolérables. Je n'ai jamais osé lui dire que son café goûtait la vieille eau de vaisselle. Il était bien trop orgueilleux pour accepter la critique, de toute façon. Quoi qu'il en soit, je suis monté dans le pick-up et je démarrai le moteur. Juste avant de prendre place, mon père s'est éloigné vers le lac. Me faisant dos, il baissa sa braguette près d'un gros sapin. Mon pick-up tout neuf était muni d'un lecteur CD, ce qui était assez nouveau à l'époque, du moins pour moi. Et le premier disque que j'avais acheté était Chronicle, The 20 Greatest Hits, CCR. Je l'écoutais en boucle et c'est celui qui se trouvait dans le lecteur à ce moment-là. Tandis que les haut-parleurs crachaient Proud Mary, je n'entendais pas mon père qui hurlait un peu plus loin. Après quelques minutes, des coups dans la fenêtre du côté passager me sortirent de ma rêverie. Mon père ouvrit la portière. Je me souviendrai toujours de l'expression sur son visage. Un mélange de peur et d'excitation animait sa moustache touffue. « Bon sang, il faut que tu vois ça !» lança-t-il. Je coupai le moteur, curieux. Il avait couru jusqu'au bord du lac, tenant son chapeau. J'emboîtai le pas. Essoufflé, il pointait la plage. La voix étranglée, il lança « Regarde !» Je m'approchai. De grosses empreintes étaient figées dans le sable humide. Elles devaient mesurer plus de 14 pouces, environ 36 cm. Elles me parurent fraîches. Nous ne les avions pas remarquées la veille. Datait-elle de la nuit ou d'avant? Ce n'étaient pas des pieds ordinaires, ça c'est certain. Il y avait une dizaine de traces en tout sur la plage. Puis les traces disparaissaient dans les galets et les hautes herbes sur la berge. Un frisson me parcourut l'échine. C'était passé si près du chalet, peut-être même pendant que nous dormions. L'histoire d'Yvon Leclerc et de ces traces immenses me revint aussitôt. Quelqu'un nous fait une blague, clairement on se moque de nous, fis-je. Eh ben, son tour est drôlement réussi. Regarde comme c'est réaliste, fit mon paternel. 5 gros orteils s'enfonçaient dans le sable, précédés d'un immense talon bombé. Je levai les yeux vers la forêt. Tu penses que ça pourrait être un ours? Manquis-je. Tu veux rire? Combien de traces d'ours as-tu vu dans ta vie? 1000? Tu trouves que ça y ressemble? Non, pas du tout, acquiesçai-je. On n'avait pas d'appareil photo avec nous et à l'époque les téléphones n'étaient pas intelligents. J'avais un vieux Nokia à clapet, c'est pour dire. Quoi qu'il en soit, nous sommes montés à bord du pick-up pour commencer notre journée de chasse. On s'est dit que si c'était vraiment un Sasquatch, il n'était probablement que de passage. Oh, comme nous avions tort. De toute la journée, nous n'avons vu en forêt que quelques écureuils et oiseaux. Aucun orignal, aucun cerf et surtout, aucun ours. En fin de journée, nous sommes rentrés au chalet pour souper. On avait allumé un petit feu dans le foyer extérieur. Pour cette deuxième nuit, nous sommes restés éveillés un peu plus tard. Depuis environ minuit, la nature s'était tue. Complètement. Les grenouilles d'habitude si loquaces ne produisaient pas le moindre croassement. Les oiseaux nocturnes se taisaient aussi et le son des insectes semblait étouffé. Le ciel était sans lune, quelques nuages masquaient les étoiles. Il n'y avait que nos voix et le crépitement du feu. Il était 1h du matin quand nous les entendîmes pour la première fois. Un son distant déformé par l'écho des montagnes. On aurait dit un chien qui aboie ou plutôt un loup. Puis il y eut une réponse de l'autre côté. Un autre loup. Je ne sais pas à quelle distance c'était de nous. Peut-être 5 ou 6 kilomètres. Les jappements se sont transformés en hurlements et en petits cris saccadés qui semblaient suivre une logique qui nous échappait. C'est si difficile de décrire ces sons avec des mots. Je ne peux les dépeindre autrement qu'en affirmant que c'étaient des primates qui les produisaient. Des putains de singes en pleine forêt boréale. C'est impossible. Il y a bien un zoo à Saint-Félicien qui tenait des singes, mais il est situé à plus de 150 km du chalet, et aux dernières nouvelles, aucun singe évadé n'avait été rapporté. Alors quoi? Vers 2 heures, les cris se sont estompés. Du coup, les criquets et les grenouilles ont retrouvé leur voix. Mon père affirma qu'ils se déplaçaient vers le nord dans la vallée, à l'opposé de notre position. On alla se coucher, prenant bien soin de verrouiller la porte du chalet. On se leva tôt ce matin-là, déterminé à ramener un ours avant la fin de la journée et de notre voyage. On en a trouvé un ours vers la fin de l'après-midi. Mon père, qui conduisait, avait stoppé net le camion. Il pointait une colline rocheuse entre 2 petits arbustes. Il faut croire que le vieux avait toujours une bonne vision. Il y avait effectivement un ours couché dans l'herbe à environ 150 mètres dans la montée. Mon père descendit et se plaça en position de tir, mettant la bête en joue dans sa lunette de visée. Après quelques secondes d'hésitation, il baissa son arme et se tourna vers moi. « Il y a quelque chose qui ne va pas, » fit-il. Confus, j'empoignai aussi mon arme et plaçai un œil sur la lunette. L'ours ne bougeait pas du tout. Il ne respirait pas du tout. Je sortis alors une petite paire de jumelles pour voir de plus près. Je crus distinguer du sang séché le long de la gueule de l'animal. Prudemment, on s'est approché. L'ours était bel et bien KO. Il n'y avait aucune trace de bagarre, pas de morsure, sauf sur sa tête. Il y avait un peu de sang dans sa fourrure sur le haut de son crâne. Je tendis la main pour tâter la blessure. Il y avait bel et bien une bosse. Soit cet ours avait trébuché et s'était cogné sur une pierre, soit on l'avait frappé avec une batte de baseball, ou encore, et c'est mon hypothèse, on lui avait lancé une pierre sur la tête, avec une force surhumaine. Mon père affirma que la carcasse devait être là depuis au moins 2 jours. Jusqu'ici, je n'avais même pas remarqué l'odeur de putréfaction qui s'en dégageait. Nous avons laissé la carcasse sur place avant de nous en retourner au chalet. Sur le chemin du retour, on discuta de ce qu'on venait de voir. Quel prédateur tuait pour ensuite laisser la carcasse sur place? Un autre ours, peut-être? Les batailles entre 2 ours sont extrêmement violentes et la pauvre bête aurait été dans un sale état si tel avait été le cas. Je pourrais avoir tort, mais je crois que l'ours a tenté d'attaquer un Sasquatch pour une raison ou pour une autre, et qu'il en a payé le prix. Après le souper, on est resté à l'intérieur un bon moment. Puis mon père est sorti allumer un feu. On était calés dans nos chaises pliantes le plus près possible des flammes, chacun enfoui sous une épaisse couverture. Il devait faire autour de 6 degrés Celsius. La nuit précédente avait été bien courte et on bâillait sans décrocher la mâchoire. Vers 22h30, on était prêt à s'en aller au lit. À peine m'étais-je levé que mon père dit « C'est encore silencieux. » Effectivement, comme la veille, il n'y avait aucun son. On les a entendus en même temps. Des whoop whoop qui provenaient de l'autre côté du lac, peut-être un peu plus loin. J'aurais dit 1 ou 2 kilomètres. Aucun de nous deux n'osait prononcer un seul mot, les yeux écarquillés de mon père plongés dans les miens. On avait tous les deux l'impression que ça s'approchait, car le son était de plus en plus fort et précis. On était à la fois pétrifiés et stupéfaits. On est resté sous les étoiles jusqu'à ce que les sons cessent aux petites heures du matin. Été-automne 2004. À quelques occasions, il nous avait semblé entendre les mêmes sons au loin. Rien qui ressemblait à ce que nous avions entendu au printemps. Ma sœur et ma mère n'y croyaient pas trop. Comme j'aurais aimé qu'elles vivent cette expérience pour le moins unique. Bien que mon père et moi avions récolté un orignal en septembre, le gibier se faisait encore rare. Printemps 2005. Un peu avant la période de chasse à l'ours, autour du mois d'avril, on se rendit au site pour bûcher du bois. On ramenait de gros tronçons qu'on fendait en bûche au chalet. Nous étions seuls, mon père et moi, ce soir-là. Il devait être autour de 20 heures. La pénombre s'était installée. Mon père préparait le souper à l'intérieur et je continuais de fendre du bois dehors à quelques mètres du balcon. Je me rendis alors compte que d'autres sons de cognements sur du bois survenaient dans la forêt entre mes coups de hache. Je pensais qu'il s'agissait d'échos, mais j'entendis 3 coups brefs. Toc, toc, toc. Intrigué, je retournai la hache et répondis par 3 coups succincts sur le billot qui se tenait devant moi. Toc, toc, toc. Il y eut une pause, puis 2 autres petits coups. Toc, toc. Je répondis par 2 coups, moi aussi, au même rythme. Il y a eu des cris dans la vallée, un peu plus tard en soirée, toujours distants. Dans les jours et les mois qui ont suivi, j'ai expérimenté avec les coups sur le bois. J'obtenais souvent une réponse quand j'utilisais la séquence 3 coups, pause, 2 coups. Pendant tous ces séjours-là, même en pleine lumière au soleil de midi, je me sentais observé. C'était peut-être de la paranoïa, mais je ne m'étais jamais senti comme ça avant dans les bois. 2008. Les années passèrent sans incident notoire. Des cognements sur les arbres, quelques cris en fin de soirée, surtout au printemps. Nous y étions presque habitués, il faisait désormais partie du paysage sonore au chalet. C'était tout aussi inquiétant, mais nous les laissions tranquilles et ils nous laissaient tranquilles. Néanmoins, le gibier semblait encore éviter le territoire. Au printemps 2008, nous y sommes retournés, moi et mon père, pour notre chasse à l'ours annuelle. Nous avions décidé de faire une ronde à pied pour être le plus discret possible afin de ne pas faire fuir les ours avec le son du pick-up. Tandis que nous marchions dans un sentier, nous avons trouvé un enchevêtrement de branches disposées en forme de tipi. La cabane de fortune devait mesurer près de 6 pieds de hauteur, plus de 180 cm et elle était assez large. On aurait pu croire que des enfants étaient venus jouer dans les environs. Cela dit, nous sommes si loin en forêt et nos plus proches voisins sont à au moins 20 km de là. La cabane était faite de troncs de bouleaux. Ça peut paraître anodin, mais les bouleaux les plus près se trouvaient à environ 1,5 km. J'ai du mal à imaginer pourquoi quelqu'un transporterait des arbres entiers jusque-là. Nous sommes revenus au crépuscule. Après le souper, on a allumé un feu dans le petit foyer et on s'est installé, moi et mon père, dans nos chaises pliantes. Les cris dans la vallée débutèrent vers 23 heures, distants au début, puis de plus en plus près. Je ne sais pas pourquoi ce soir-là, nous avons décidé de tenter de communiquer avec eux. Mais mon père a empoigné son cornet d'appel à l'orignal, un cône en écorce qui sert à projeter la voix pour imiter le son des orignaux en période de chasse. Il a reproduit un son de whoop qu'on entendait. Aussitôt, on a reçu une réponse avec une légère variante. que mon père imita aussitôt. Ça a continué comme ça quelques minutes. Puis les cris se sont rapprochés. Ils semblaient plus agressifs, comme s'ils étaient en colère. Encore une fois, plus aucun son d'insectes ou d'animaux. Nous étions plongés dans le silence total, outre le crépitement du feu. « Tu viens peut-être de lui dire que tu l'emmerdes » plaisantai-je. Un cri provint de la gauche, puis un autre de la droite, puis un autre droit devant, près du lac. Mon sourire s'effaça aussitôt. À vrai dire, ce n'était plus des cris. C'était comme un langage primitif. Pour tout dire, on aurait juré 3 samouraïs qui discutaient en colère. Une angoisse indescriptible s'empara de moi. Éteins le feu, fit soudain mon père. Quoi? Mais éteins le feu! Il scrutait l'obscurité, les yeux écarquillés et la bouche entr'ouverte. Une chaudière pleine d'eau de pluie se trouvait sous les gouttières du chalet juste derrière moi. À 2 mains, je la soulevai et en déversai le contenu sur les flammes. Nous fûmes alors plongés dans l'obscurité la plus totale. Les voix continuaient tout autour de nous. Alors je compris. Ils utilisaient la même technique que les loups pour nous encercler avant de fondre sur nous. On était observés, traqués. Mon père était maintenant debout. Il recula vers le chalet doucement. J'emboîtai le pas, ne faisant jamais d'eau au lac ou à la forêt, tournant ma tête de tous les côtés. Des branches craquaient tout autour de nous. Des cognements de bois contre bois se faisaient aussi entendre de plus en plus fort. Nous avons atteint le patio, tous deux terrorisés. Nous gravîmes les marches une à une, à reculons. Un long hurlement si puissant que je dus me boucher les oreilles se fit alors entendre. Aucun être humain ne pourrait produire ce son avec une telle puissance. À la hâte, nous sommes entrés dans le chalet, dans l'obscurité totale en verrouillant la porte. Ça a duré pendant d'interminables minutes d'angoisse, avant que les bruits ne s'estompent enfin. Ils venaient de nous passer un message. On est chez nous, vous, non. Plus jamais nous n'avons tenté de communiquer avec eux. La semaine suivante, le chalet le plus près de nous, celui à 20 km, a été vendu. Je suis convaincu que nous ne sommes pas les seuls à être tombés sur ces créatures pendant la chasse du printemps en 2008. Permettez-moi d'ouvrir une parenthèse. Un de mes amis possède un chalet à Sacré-Cœur. C'est à plus d'une centaine de kilomètres du chalet de mon père au sud-est. En 2007, quand il l'a acheté, le vendeur lui avait remis les clés et la dernière chose qu'il lui avait dit était « Vous allez voir des affaires ici, des choses que vous ne verrez jamais ailleurs. » Puis il avait tourné les talons et s'en était allé. Mon ami n'avait pas trop compris ce qu'il voulait dire, jusqu'à l'année suivante. À l'été 2008, quelques mois après la nuit de terreur avec mon père, je visitai l'ami en question à son chalet et la conversation en vint rapidement aux événements de notre secteur de chasse. Mon ami avait disparu dans sa chambre et en avait sorti un ordinateur portable. Il me montra alors la photo d'une de ses caméras de chasse, et on y distinguait clairement une bête au pelage brun, nettement plus grosse qu'un ours. Je ne sais pas si cette photo a été perdue au moment où je vous parle. Fermez la parenthèse. 2012. Ensuite, les sons sont devenus de plus en plus rares, jusqu'en 2012 où ils ont complètement cessé. Le gibier était de retour et la chasse à nouveau fructueuse. 2018. Un peu avant la période de chasse, on allait toujours porter des appâts en forêt pour attirer les ours noirs. Du gras de bacon, des pâtisseries sucrées, du maïs et même un peu de viande hachée. Les ours ne sont pas très difficiles. On était en fin de soirée, j'étais seul et je m'apprêtais à revenir au chalet. Je lançais ça et là des bonbons aux fruits en revenant vers le chemin principal. J'emporte toujours un fusil de chasse avec moi, car on pourrait tomber sur une mère ours avec des oursons, et dans des cas comme ça, il vaut mieux pouvoir se défendre. Les mères ours n'hésitent pas à attaquer, même sans provocation. Soudain, l'atmosphère est devenue très lourde. Je me sentais observé, et ça, on ne s'y habitue jamais. 2 gros buissons très denses entouraient le sentier. Juste avant de m'y faufiler, j'ai entendu un grognement très bas. Ce n'était ni un loup, ni un ours. Je savais pertinemment ce qui se trouvait là, dans ce buisson. J'ai stoppé net dans le sentier. La pénombre enveloppait la scène et on n'y voyait rien du tout. Sans m'en rendre compte, j'avais reculé de quelques pas en empoignant mon arme et en la braquant droit devant moi. Quelque chose remua derrière moi, un bruissement tout près. La technique de la meute de loups me revint aussitôt en tête. Une impulsion incontrôlable me poussa à courir le plus vite possible hors du sentier. En moins de 2, je traversai le buisson et rejoignis le chemin principal. Juste avant d'entrer dans ma camionnette, un hurlement puissant retentit. J'en ai presque pissé dans mon pantalon. J'ouvris la portière que je claquai, tournant la clé et détalant en faisant voler des cailloux derrière moi. Une forme sombre se tenait au milieu du chemin, menaçante, alors que je m'éloignais. Depuis les tout premiers incidents, je suis allé maintes fois aux eaux de Saint-Félicien pour voir les primates, comprendre leur comportement et écouter les sons qu'ils émettent. J'y ai passé des heures. Je suis convaincu que ce sont des primates qui hantent la forêt autour de mon chalet. De très, très gros primates. Note du narrateur. L'histoire que vous venez d'entendre est librement inspirée du vrai témoignage d'un chasseur anonyme, en plus des empreintes retrouvées en 2001 par Yvon Leclerc dans les Monts-Valin. J'ai imaginé un récit à la première personne en condensant le témoignage pour y ajouter de l'intensité. Un lien a été placé dans la description pour écouter la vraie entrevue avec le chasseur. Ainsi, vous pourrez vous faire votre propre opinion du témoignage original. Entrevue réalisée par Bigfoot Québec. Merci de m'avoir accompagné près du feu. À très bientôt pour de nouvelles histoires.
I grew up in North Pennsylvania in a small town called Wellsboro. It's surrounded by state game land. I don't live there anymore, but hunting season was a big deal there. Schools would even close on the first day of rifle season because half the town would be out in the woods. My dad got me into hunting when I was about 12, and by the time I was 23, I was going out alone regularly. This happened during the late archery season in November of 2021. I remember because there was already a light dusting of snow on the ground, which made it easier to track movement. I had permission to hunt a large piece of private land owned by an older guy my dad knew from work. The property was around 70 acres of thick woods with a small clearing and an old logging trail running through it. There was also an abandoned hunting cabin way back in the woods that nobody used anymore because the roof was starting to cave in. I had been there maybe 4 or 5 times before and never saw anyone else. That morning, I got there around 5:15 a.m. while it was still completely dark. I parked my truck where I always did near a rusted gate and walked in with my headlamp on. The woods were dead quiet. I remember having this weird feeling like I was being watched before I even got to the stand, but I just blamed it on being alone in the dark like always. I climbed into my tree stand about 20 feet up and waited for daylight. About an hour after sunrise, I noticed something that immediately bothered me. About 60 yards out, I saw another tree stand that had not been there before. I knew the property pretty well, and I was certain it had not been there the previous weekend. It was one of those cheap ladder stands, and it looked old and weathered, like it had been sitting somewhere for years, but I would have noticed it before. What bothered me more was that there were no footprints leading to it in the snow, except for one single trail of prints that went from deep in the woods straight to the base of the stand. I watched it for a while, thinking maybe someone else had permission to hunt there and just never mentioned it. Around 8 a.m., I saw movement near that stand. At first, thinking it was a deer, I was dead wrong, and I saw it was a person standing behind a tree. He wasn't in camo. He was wearing a dirty gray hoodie and dark pants. He was still, and he was looking in my direction. I didn't know if he saw me at first, but then he slowly raised his arm and waved. I wouldn't say it was a friendly, smiley wave, more so a wave like he was just letting me know he saw me. I gave a small wave back, thinking maybe he was just another hunter who didn't have proper gear. After maybe a minute, he stepped behind the tree, and I expected him to walk away, but he didn't come out the other side. I waited and waited, but he never reappeared. I assumed he must have walked deeper into the woods, but I never heard footsteps. Around 10, I climbed down to stretch my legs and maybe still hunt a little. I walked toward where I saw him. When I got to the tree he had been standing behind, I saw that the snow around the tree was completely undisturbed, except for my own tracks walking in. There were no tracks leading away, just the same single line of footprints I saw earlier leading toward the ladder stand. I followed those prints, and they stopped right at the base of the stand. I looked up, expecting maybe he climbed it, but it was empty. The seat had a thin layer of snow on it that didn't look disturbed. That made no sense. I remember feeling my chest get tight, like something was very wrong. I decided to head back toward my own stand. On the way back, I noticed something tied to a branch at about eye level. It was a strip of orange hunting vest material tied in a knot. I was thinking maybe someone marked a trail, but then I saw another one about 15 feet away, and then another. They were tied at different heights, like someone had been marking something pretty specifically. That was the first time I considered just leaving. Around noon, I went back to my truck to eat and warm up. Nothing happened during that time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched from the tree line. I almost left, but I convinced myself I was just overthinking things. I went back in around 2 p.m. to sit until dark. This is where things got bad. About an hour before sunset, I heard what sounded like slow footsteps behind me in the leaves. Too heavy and spaced out to be an animal. I turned to face them, expecting to see another hunter. About 30 yards behind my stand, I saw the same guy from earlier. This time he was closer, and I could see his face better. His beard looked patchy and dirty, and his skin looked pale like he hadn't been outside in daylight in weeks. What really bothered me was that he was smiling, but not in a normal way. He was just barely showing his teeth. He was holding something in his right hand, which at first I thought was a stick, until seeing the little yellow and black handle. It was a screwdriver. He didn't say anything. He chose to just stare me down with that half smile. I asked if he had permission to be on the property, but he didn't answer. After maybe 10 seconds of this heart-pounding stare-off, he slowly turned and walked away into the trees. That should have been the moment I left. However, I made the stupid decision to stay until shooting light ended. Right after sunset, I climbed down and started walking back fast. In that moment, I remember regretting not leaving while I still had some light in the sky. About halfway to my truck, I started noticing the orange cloth strips again, but this time they weren't just on branches. Some were tied to small sticks pushed into the ground, but the thing that genuinely scared me was one of the sticks had something hanging from it. It was a dead squirrel. It had been hung by a wire through its back legs. I may be a hunter, but I don't condone needless suffering of animals. Under the squirrel and stick, in the snow, someone had drawn a rough circle with a boot. That was the second time I seriously considered running. As I kept walking, I started noticing more of them. Not just squirrels, a rabbit, a crow, all hung the same way like markers, or maybe a threat. I started walking faster. About 100 yards from my truck, I saw something leaning against a tree that made me stop completely. It was my backpack, the one I had left in my tree stand earlier that day. I never brought it back down with me. It was zipped open, and my stuff was laid out in the snow, including my knife, my flashlight, and my extra arrows. They were all lined up neatly, like someone had taken inventory. That was the moment of realization that someone had been close enough to my stand to climb it without me knowing. I grabbed my stuff fast and jogged the rest of the way. When I got to the clearing where my truck was, I had another unexpected encounter. It was like it just didn't stop. My driver's side door was open. I know I locked it because I always do. Nothing inside looked stolen, but my registration papers were sitting on the passenger seat instead of the glove box. I got in and locked the doors, and as I started the truck, I looked in the mirror toward the tree line. There he was, standing just inside the woods, maybe 40 yards away, the guy in the hoodie. From what I could tell, he was still smiling. This time he raised his hand again, but instead of waving, he just pointed at me. Then he slowly dragged his finger across his own throat. I left so fast I spun gravel all the way back to the main road. I told the property owner what happened, and he said nobody else had permission to be there. He contacted the game commission. About 2 weeks later, he called my dad and said officers found a makeshift shelter deep on the property made from tarps and old wood. Inside, they found animal bones and stolen hunting gear from other properties. I never hunted there again. I don't hunt alone anymore either. Definitely not in grounds I'm not familiar with. Anything can happen when you're all alone out there. Yet, not actually alone. This story takes place in November of last year when I was on a hunting trip with my grandpa to Crockett, Texas. I don't really get to see my grandpa that often because he owns his own company, so when he told me he wanted to go hunting, I was more than happy to go. I will say, I personally don't like hunting, but I love to camp, and I had never been to this particular lease he was taking us to, so I figured why not? I love exploring new places. So I took a few days off from work and went down to Crockett with him. As we pulled up to the gate, I noticed there wasn't a real entryway like most places I've been to. It was just a dirt track with an iron gate on the side of a freeway. My grandpa got out of the truck to lift the gate, and then we headed down a long dirt road through the woods until we reached a clearing with an old house in the middle. While we were heading toward the house, he told me his father built it and they used it to go hunting or just relax and take a break from life. I could definitely see that. It was so peaceful inside the woods I could barely hear the cars from the freeway. It seemed like the perfect getaway for the weekend, or so I thought. After we pulled into the driveway, we unpacked the truck and cooked dinner for the night. Everything seemed normal. There were old beds where we put sheets and blankets, an old TV with a VCR, and the stove was particularly old-fashioned as well. After we finished eating, we went to sleep around 8:30 so we could wake up just before dawn to go to one of the blinds. As I started to fall asleep, I heard a scratching noise coming from one of the windows with the screen on it. I didn't think anything of it and fell asleep fairly soon after that. The next morning, my grandpa woke me up to get dressed so we could go to the blind. After we got there, we settled in and surveyed the clearing. We didn't see anything for a couple hours, so we decided to take a nap. I woke up after only being asleep a few minutes and took my binoculars to look at the tree line. The tree line was about 1.5 miles from the blind. I swear to God, I spotted someone peeking around the trees right at the edge of the woods, like they knew we were there. It was almost as if they had been watching us the whole time. I was thoroughly convinced someone was watching us, so I woke up my grandpa. He looked through his binoculars, and right then, a herd of deer came out into the clearing. He just chuckled and told me there was nothing to worry about and that it was just wildlife. I was irritated to say the least. I know what I saw, and it looked like someone, or at least something. After about 30 minutes, he shot one of the deer, and we took it back to the house to clean it and start skinning it. After we gutted the deer, it was about 3 o'clock, and we decided what we wanted for dinner, but we needed to head into town to get some supplies. So we hung the deer up and left for the store. When we got back, we saw claw and bite marks all over the animal's body. My grandpa and I just looked at each other in shock. He looked at me and said we were going on a night hunt. I asked him what for, and he told me he thought it was coyotes, but I didn't think that was the case. This didn't seem normal. After we ate, We grabbed some flashlights and our ARs and went out scouting. We were talking for a solid 45 minutes before we heard anything. We got really close to the tree line, and I suddenly turned and saw something peeking out at us again. The second it realized I noticed it, it quickly hid. I tried everything in my power not to yell for my grandpa, so I did a light whistle to him and waved him over to where I saw it. He whispered for me to stay put and watch his back. He walked into the woods with his gun raised and disappeared. I stood there for what felt like forever, waiting to hear something. After about 10 minutes, I heard a gunshot. I ran into the woods and saw a coyote with a mutilated deer next to it. I breathed a sigh of relief seeing my grandpa okay, but he told me the coyote noticed him and looked like it was about to attack, so he had no choice. We sat there for a moment before we heard rustling in the distance, followed by the most horrifying scream I've ever heard. It wasn't human, and it was definitely not any animal I recognized, but I didn't care to find out. We booked it back to the house as fast as we could while hearing intense heavy footsteps and heavy breathing coming from behind us. It felt like we would never make it back, but we did. We slammed the door shut and locked every entrance. All we heard were weird screeching sounds and breathing right outside the door. Whatever it was began to get frustrated and slammed against the door a couple times. My grandpa got tired of being scared and shot through the door a couple times. It must have heard whatever was on the other side, because it made that terrifying screech again and then ran away. As soon as we could catch our breath, I called the police and told them what happened. They were obviously skeptical of the story, but when the deputy arrived, he didn't know what to think either. We showed him everything we found. He seemed pretty unsettled by it too. Nothing ever came back from that call, but needless to say, we probably won't ever be going back to that house again. Kyle had been asking Connor and I for 2 years to go hunting with him, and we always brushed it off because neither of us really knew what we were doing, and hunting was never something I was interested in. Kyle was the kind of guy who actually knew how to do things though. He knew how to gut a deer, split wood, start a fire without lighter fluid, and somehow look comfortable sleeping on the ground. Connor and I were not those kinds of guys. We liked the idea of a hunting trip more than the reality of it. Sitting around drinking in the mountains for a weekend sounded good. Hiking miles into the woods, waking up before sunrise, and killing an animal did not. But Kyle finally talked us into it late one November. He said rifle season was open and the weather would be cold enough to keep the bugs down. He knew a spot in the mountains where he had hunted before and almost never saw anyone else. I'm being honest, he mainly convinced us with the food and beer part in the middle of the mountains. The plan was this: we would drive up Friday morning, hike in, set up camp, and spend the weekend hunting. I'm not a hunter, so I'll do my best to use hunting terms and whatever. Connor agreed to the trip because he would agree to almost anything if it sounded like a good story later. I agreed because I didn't want to be the only one still saying no, and FOMO is strong with me sometimes. We loaded Kyle's truck before sunrise and drove a few hours into the mountains. Kyle kept talking us through everything like we were in some beginner class. He showed us how to keep the rifles pointed safe, how to walk without making as much noise, what deer sign looked like, and how to spot little trails through thick woods that I never would have noticed on my own. After parking the truck at a pull-off near an old logging road, we hiked in for an annoying amount of time. Kyle said it was only a few miles. It felt like 10. By the time we got to the area he wanted, my shoulders were sore and my legs were shaking on the steeper parts. We found a flat spot near a small creek and set up camp there. Kyle did most of the work because Connor and I were honestly useless. By the time it got dark,